Sparky here, ready to fetch the key points. Welcome to the art of professional tour guiding, mastering the three-part tour. Let's make this short and sweet. To kick off our exploration of professional tour guiding, we must first master the fundamental concept of interpretation. In the context of the travel and tourism industry, interpretation is far more than just translating words from one language to another. Instead, it is the core methodology a guide uses to bridge the gap between a destination's raw facts and a visitor's personal experience. It is defined as the specific methods and techniques used to make information understandable, educational, and entertaining for every tourist. When we look at the first pillar, being understandable, we recognize that a guide acts as a filter. A site might have a complex history filled with technical jargon or confusing timelines. If a guide simply recites a list of dates and names, the audience will likely lose interest or feel overwhelmed. Interpretation is the art of making the technical feel non-technical. It involves choosing the right words and the right delivery so that the story makes sense to someone who has never visited the area before. It is about making the history or the environment relevant to the lives of the guests standing in front of you. The second pillar is the educational component. A professional guide has a responsibility to be a source of truthful, accurate, and up-to-date information. However, education in guiding is not the same as a traditional classroom lecture. True interpretation provokes thought. It inspires visitors to look at a landscape or a monument and wonder about the people who were there before. It encourages them to ask questions and seek out further knowledge even after the tour has ended. By providing truthful information in an engaging way, you are not just teaching, you are inspiring a deeper appreciation for the country and its culture. Finally, we have the third pillar, which is entertainment. Even the most fascinating historical site can become boring if the delivery is dry. Good interpretation is inherently entertaining. It uses storytelling, humor, and passion to capture the audience's attention. This is especially important when guests are tired from long flights or early morning starts. Your gift of speech is what keeps them awake and engaged. The importance of these techniques becomes clear when we look at retention rates. Studies show that people generally remember only 10% of what they hear and 30% of what they read. However, they remember 50% of what they see and a staggering 90% of what they actively participate in. This is why interpretation is so vital. By using these techniques to create an interactive, visual, and engaging narrative, you move your guests from being passive listeners to active participants. You are not just fulfilling an itinerary or ensuring guest safety. You are creating a lasting memory. By mastering interpretation, you ensure that the information sticks, the experience is valued, and the guests leave with a profound connection to the destination. When you step into the role of a professional tour guide, you are doing much more than just pointing at landmarks or reciting dates. You are managing the cognitive experience of your guests. To do this effectively, you must understand how people actually retain information. Research into learning retention suggests that guests only remember about 10% of what they hear. This is a humbling statistic for any guide, but it underscores why your delivery method matters so much. If you rely solely on lecturing, a vast majority of your hard-earned knowledge will likely be forgotten by the time the guests reach their hotel. Retention rates improve as the experience becomes more sensory and participatory. When guests read information, such as on a plaque or a brochure you provide, retention jumps to 30%. If they see something happening or observe a visual demonstration, they typically remember about half of that experience. The gold standard, however, is active participation. When guests actually do something or give a presentation themselves, their retention rate skyrockets to 90%. This is why the best guides move away from the classroom style and toward an interactive, immersive environment. By encouraging guests to ask questions, engage with the surroundings, and participate in the narrative, you ensure that the tour leaves a lasting impression rather than just a fleeting memory. Beyond the educational side of the job, every professional guide carries two primary non-negotiable responsibilities. The first is ensuring guest safety. This is your absolute priority from the moment you meet your group until the final goodbye. Safety involves everything from checking equipment and monitoring weather conditions to being aware of the physical limitations of your guests.
It also means establishing clear behavioral expectations early on, such as staying together on a trail or following specific protocols at a sensitive archaeological site. If a guest feels unsafe or becomes injured, the quality of your storytelling will not matter. You are the protector of their well-being in an unfamiliar environment. The second core responsibility is fulfilling the itinerary. When a tourist buys a package, the itinerary is essentially a contract. They have paid for a specific set of experiences, and it is your job to manage time, logistics, and energy levels to ensure every promise is met.
Whether it is a visit to a specific Mayan temple or a scheduled stop for a traditional lunch, the guide must be the master of the clock. Fulfilling the itinerary requires a balance of technical accuracy and entertainment. You must provide truthful, up-to-date information while keeping the mood light and engaging. By mastering both safety and the schedule, you create a professional framework that allows the beauty of the destination to truly shine. In the professional field of tour guiding, the way information is shared is far from one size fits all. Instead, guides rely on 5 distinct categories of presentations to ensure that guests are safe, informed, and entertained. These categories form a structured approach that moves from initial logistics to deep storytelling and finally to a successful conclusion. Understanding these types allows a guide to transition seamlessly between being a logistics coordinator and a compelling narrator. The first category is the briefing. This is arguably the most critical presentation for the physical safety and smooth operation of the day. A briefing happens before the activity begins and focuses on setting clear expectations. It covers the essentials, like what equipment is needed, reminders about personal medication, and specific behavioral guidelines. For instance, if you are heading into a cave, your briefing must include instructions on using helmets and life jackets, as well as rules about where to step to protect the environment. It is about preparing the mind and the body for the task ahead, ensuring everyone knows the timeline and the rules of engagement. Next is the orientation. While a briefing tells you how to behave, an orientation tells you where you are. This presentation focuses on the physical and geographical layout of a location. It answers the immediate questions guests often have the moment they step off a vehicle. Where are the restrooms located? Where is the meeting point if we get separated? How long is the hike to the main site? A strong orientation grounds the group, relieving any logistical anxiety so they can focus on the experience itself. The third type is the general presentation. This usually occurs while the group is in transit or moving between specific highlights. It is often less formal than a site lecture and serves to bridge the gaps in the itinerary. This is where a guide might talk about the local culture, the history of the passing landscape, or interesting facts about the country in general. It keeps the energy high and the conversation flowing, turning travel time into valuable learning time. The fourth category is the site-specific presentation or lecture. This is the heart of the educational experience, where the guide shares their specialized knowledge about a specific attraction, such as an archaeological site or a national park. However, a professional guide knows that even a lecture should never feel like a dry classroom session. Instead of just reciting dates and numbers, the guide uses storytelling to make the site come alive. They might sit the group down in a shaded spot among ancient ruins and describe the lives of the people who once walked there, using facts as the foundation for a vivid conversational narrative. Finally, we have the wrap-up or rapport. This presentation takes place at the end of the journey. It is a moment to summarize the day's highlights, share a laugh over a funny moment that occurred, and express genuine gratitude for the group's participation. It serves as the final logistical check, such as conducting a head count and ensuring no one has left their belongings behind. By mastering these 5 presentation types, a guide ensures that every piece of information is delivered at the right time and in the right way to create a professional and memorable tour. When we think about a professional tour, it is helpful to visualize it not as one long, continuous speech, but as a carefully structured story divided into 3 distinct acts. These 3 segments are the welcome briefing, the destination presentation, and the tour wrap-up. While these sections should feel seamless to your guests, a master guide understands the specific goals and boundaries of each.
Often the lines between them can become a bit blurry or repetitive in practice, but keeping them organized in your mind ensures that you never miss a critical piece of information or a chance to build rapport.
The first act is the welcome and tour briefing. This is your chance to set the stage and, more importantly, to establish trust. This segment happens the moment you meet your group, whether at a hotel lobby or an airport. It is here that you handle the logistics that allow the rest of the day to run smoothly. You introduce yourself, provide your nickname to make yourself more approachable and memorable, and introduce your support staff, like your driver or boat captain. Beyond introductions, the briefing is where you manage expectations.
You explain the itinerary, the travel times, and the physical requirements of the day. You cover the essentials like safety gear, medication, and behavioral expectations. By addressing these non-technical details early, you clear the mental clutter for your guests so they can focus entirely on the experience ahead. The second act is the destination presentation, which is the heart of the tour experience. This is where the actual interpretation happens. Whether you are walking through an archaeological site, hiking a jungle trail, or exploring a national park, this segment is about making the environment come alive.
A key rule here is to avoid lecturing. Instead of a one-way stream of facts, the destination presentation should feel like a lively, open conversation. You use storytelling to link facts together, making the history of a site or the biology of an animal relevant to the people standing in front of you. You ask them questions, invite their observations, and use props or the surrounding landscape to illustrate your points. The goal is to provoke thought and inspire curiosity, rather than just delivering a history lesson. Finally, we have the third act, the tour wrap-up, also known as the rapport or the goodbye. This is your closing statement. It is the time to summarize the highlights of the day, reminding guests of the most exciting or funny moments they shared. You express genuine gratitude for their time and participation, and you give them a final chance to ask questions. Crucially, this is also where you perform a final head count and provide closing instructions for their return or next destination. A strong wrap-up reinforces the bond you have built throughout the day and ensures that the guests leave with a clear, positive, lasting impression of both you and the destination. By mastering these 3 segments, you ensure that your tour is not just an outing, but a professional, well-paced, and unforgettable journey.
A professional tour begins long before the first site is visited. It starts the very moment you greet your guests. This first segment, the welcome briefing, is your opportunity to set the tone, establish authority, and build an immediate rapport that will carry through the rest of the day. The greeting should never be rushed or treated as a mere formality. It begins with a general greeting, where you bid your guests the time of day, whether it is a warm good morning or an energetic hello. This simple act of courtesy acknowledges their presence and signals that the experience has officially commenced. Once you have welcomed the group, it is crucial to anchor them geographically. You must identify your current physical location with precision. Instead of just saying you are in a specific town, be descriptive. Tell them, for instance, that you are standing in front of the San Ignacio Hotel or at the old hospital area. This provides a sense of place and safety, helping guests orient themselves in an unfamiliar environment. The next essential component is introducing yourself and establishing a personal connection. A professional guide knows that their name is the primary tool for communication. However, foreign names can often be difficult for travelers to remember. This is where the strategic use of a memorable nickname or association becomes a powerful technique. As seen in professional practice, a guide named Javier might suggest guests call him "Have a Beer." It is humorous, relatable, and virtually impossible to forget. Whether your name is Amira, Ludwig, or Bartolo, finding a way to facilitate memory, perhaps by linking your name to a common word or a fun persona like Rambo, creates an instant bond. It transforms you from a nameless service provider into a friend and expert. Following your own introduction, you must introduce your support team, particularly the driver or assistant guides. Acknowledging your colleagues by name and highlighting their specific expertise, such as mentioning that a driver has 15 or 20 years of experience, serves 2 purposes. First, it fosters a sense of security, assuring the guests they are in capable hands. Second, it establishes a professional team dynamic.
Finally, you must confirm the tour by its specific title, exactly as it was sold to the guests. Stating that you are heading to the Aktun Tunichal Muknal Cave or the Karakal archaeological site ensures everyone is on the same page. This is the moment to share your passion, perhaps mentioning your love for birds or your pride in your Mayan heritage. By combining a structured greeting, clear location identification, and a memorable personal identity, you transition from a stranger to a trusted professional, ensuring the group is excited and ready for the journey ahead. Once your initial greetings are out of the way, you move into one of the most critical stages of the welcome segment, the tour briefing. This is where you transition from being a friendly host to a professional leader responsible for the well-being of your group. A safe and informative briefing acts as the foundation for the entire experience, ensuring that guests know exactly what is expected of them and what they need to do to stay protected. The primary goal here is twofold: fulfilling the promised itinerary and, most importantly, ensuring guest safety. Safety begins with proper preparation and equipment. You must be specific about what your guests need for the specific terrain you are visiting. If you are heading into the jungle or an archaeological site like Karakol, emphasize the need for appropriate footwear. In the field, we often refer to these as enclosed shoes or proper hiking boots, rather than just tennis shoes, to ensure the language is clear for international visitors. If the tour involves water, like cave tubing or a trip to Shark Ray Alley, this is the time to discuss gear like helmets, life jackets, and even the correct mask sizes. Remind your guests to check their equipment before setting off, mentioning small details like whether they will need socks for a specific part of a cave tour or if they should have their cameras ready but protected from the humidity shows a high level of professional foresight. Next, you must address health and medication. This is a sensitive but vital part of the briefing. You should ask your guests if anyone has specific allergies, chronic illnesses, or medical conditions that might be affected by the day's activities. Encourage them to carry their prescribed medications with them at all times rather than leaving them in the van. Whether it is an inhaler for asthma or an EpiPen for allergies, having these items on their person can prevent a minor issue from becoming a major emergency. It is also your job to keep them hydrated. Remind them to fill their water bottles and mention the weather conditions, especially if it is going to be a high humidity day reaching over 90 degrees. Finally, set clear behavioral expectations. A professional guide manages the impact of the tour on the environment and the local culture. Instruct your guests on waste management. Let them know there is a garbage bag in the vehicle, and emphasize that nothing should be thrown out of the windows or left at the sites. If you are visiting a wildlife sanctuary or a national park, establish the rules for interacting with nature. No feeding the animals, no touching the wildlife, and no disturbing the natural habitat. Similarly, at archaeological sites, remind them that graffiti or climbing on restricted areas is strictly prohibited. You should also touch on social behavior, such as keeping noise levels down to respect other groups and the serenity of the location. By outlining these boundaries early, you create a respectful atmosphere where everyone feels secure and the environment remains protected. Mastering the art of tour guiding involves far more than just memorizing facts and dates. It requires a high level of self-awareness regarding your physical presence and the way you project your voice and body language to an audience. One of the most common challenges for a developing guide is maintaining physical stillness. You might notice that when you are nervous or excited, you have a tendency to pace, sway, or what the material refers to as dancing around. This constant movement can be incredibly distracting for your guests. Instead of focusing on your stories or the beautiful scenery, their eyes are constantly tracking your motion. To project authority and confidence, you must practice standing still. Think of yourself as a centered anchor for the group. When you are delivering a briefing or a destination presentation, plant your feet firmly and stay in one spot. This physical stability translates into a sense of reliability and expertise in the minds of your tourists. Closely related to body stillness is the management of your hands. Many guides fall into the trap of overusing hand gestures or adopting what the lecture calls funny mannerisms. While gestures can be a great way to emphasize a point, they lose their power when they are constant or repetitive.
If you find that your hands are flying around or that you are fidgeting with your equipment or clothing, it is time to simplify. A practical coaching tip is to keep your hands in front of you, perhaps lightly clasped at the waist, when you are not using them for a specific purpose.
This keeps you from looking closed off with crossed arms, while also preventing distracting, aimless movements. Every gesture you make should be intentional and serve to illustrate your story or point toward a specific feature of the site. Beyond the physical, professional delivery is heavily impacted by the language you choose. Repetitive language is a major pitfall, particularly the over-reliance on filler words or informal addresses. A common habit highlighted in the training is the constant use of the word guys. When every sentence begins or ends with guys, it can start to sound unprofessional and monotonous. To elevate your delivery, you should consciously vary your vocabulary. Instead of falling back on that one repetitive word, try using alternatives like friends, everyone, folks, or my guests. This not only keeps the presentation fresh, but also builds a better rapport by showing a higher level of verbal skill and respect for the group. Finally, delivery is about managing your energy. You want to have a lively and passionate attitude, but you must avoid being loud just for the sake of being loud. Shouting often stems from a lack of confidence. A professional guide knows how to bring the grouping close and speak in a conversational tone that feels intimate and engaging. This creates an environment where guests feel like they are part of a shared experience rather than just sitting through a lecture. By focusing on these three pillars, stillness, controlled gestures, and varied language, you transform your delivery from a simple transfer of information into a polished professional performance. Practice these elements until they become natural, and you will find that your guests are far more attentive and appreciative of the experience you are providing. Once you have moved past the initial briefing and arrived at your site, you enter the heart of the experience, the destination presentation. This is the middle segment where the magic of interpretation truly happens. The most important rule to remember here is that you are not a professor giving a lecture. You are a storyteller facilitating a conversation. A professional guide knows how to break down the barrier between themselves and the group. Instead of standing stiffly at the front, try to find a place where everyone can be comfortable. If there is a patch of grass or some stone steps, invite your guest to sit with you. By positioning yourself as part of the circle rather than a distant authority figure, you create an environment where people feel free to participate and stay engaged. During this part of the tour, your language choices are critical. It is easy to fall into the habit of using repetitive filler phrases like this is, that is, or as you can see. These phrases often lead to a redundant style of guiding that causes listeners to tune out. To keep the delivery fresh, focus on building a narrative. Use facts to assist your story rather than letting the facts be the entire presentation. For example, instead of simply stating that a structure was built in 600 AD, describe the era as a time when the civilization was reaching a peak of success and development, then weave the specific date into that broader context. This makes the information feel relevant and alive. Engagement also comes from linking the site to the guests' own lives. If you were discussing an ancient Maya ball court, don't just talk about the rules in a vacuum. Compare it to something modern like the NBA, explaining how players use their hips and elbows instead of their hands. Ask your guests questions like, have you ever seen a building this tall? Or, if you were living here 1,000 years ago, where do you think you would want to sit? This forces them to use their imagination and stay mentally active. You should also use the tools of the trade to bring your words to life. If you were talking about ancient trade, don't just describe the currency. Pull out a physical example like a piece of jade or a specific coin for them to see. If you are discussing local wildlife, like a tapir or a jaguar, have high-quality photos or props ready to show them. Using these physical markers helps bridge the gap between abstract history and reality. Finally, always strive for professional accuracy in your terminology. Use the correct plural forms, like stelae instead of stellas, and avoid common errors like saying equipments. By combining technical precision with a warm, conversational storytelling style, you transform a standard site visit into an unforgettable journey. After a full day of exploring ancient ruins or navigating winding rivers, you might be tempted to think your job is finished once the destination is behind you. However, the tour wrap-up, also known as the rapport stage, is arguably one of the most vital segments of the entire experience. This is your final opportunity to cement a positive relationship with your guests and ensure they leave with a lasting favorable impression of both you and your country. A professional wrap-up serves two main purposes. It reinforces the educational value of the tour through a summary of highlights, and it fulfills your primary responsibility of ensuring guest safety and logistics.
To begin a masterful wrap-up, start by summarizing the journey. You should walk your guests back through the most recent major sites and experiences, moving in reverse or chronological order, to remind them of everything they have achieved. Mention specific landmarks, such as the impressive friezes at Sunatanich or the unique history of the Cajalpach site. Don't just list facts. Instead, cite specific highlights that resonated with the group. Use this time to revisit shared experiences, particularly the funny or unique moments that occurred.
If a guest had a minor slip on a trail, or if the group spotted a rare tropical bird, bringing these moments up helps create a sense of community and shared history. This is also the time to solicit responses. Ask your guests what their favorite part was, or if anything surprised them. By facilitating this conversation, you transform a one-way lecture into a meaningful exchange of memories. Showing genuine gratitude is the next essential component. Your guests have chosen to invest their time and money into this experience, and acknowledging that is crucial. Thank them for their participation, their curiosity, and their cooperation with safety guidelines. This gratitude should extend to your support staff as well. A professional guide always highlights the contributions of the driver, the boat captain, or the site assistants by name. Remind your guests that the smooth ride through bumpy terrain was thanks to the driver's decades of experience, or that the lunch they enjoyed was prepared by a talented local team. This builds a sense of professionalism and shows that you value the entire team.
Finally, never overlook the practicalities of the wrap-up. You must provide final instructions regarding belongings and logistics. Remind everyone to check their seats for cameras, binoculars, and medication. Most importantly, you must conduct a final head count. As a guide, keeping the group together is a primary responsibility. There are many cautionary tales of travelers being left behind due to a guide's carelessness, so you must be diligent. Whether you are at a ferry crossing or arriving back at a hotel, visit every person is present.
By combining humor, storytelling, and rigorous safety checks, you ensure the tour ends on a high note of trust and satisfaction. The final and perhaps most profound responsibility of a professional tour guide lies in the role of a cultural ambassador. Beyond simply reciting dates or identifying flora and fauna, a guide serves as the bridge between a visitor's preconceived notions and the authentic reality of a destination. It is common for tourists to arrive with mental baggage, often fueled by sensationalized media or incomplete information found online. They may carry prejudices or fears about safety, poverty, or social issues. As a guide, you are the primary person equipped to address these cultural prejudices and represent your country with the accuracy that only comes from deep passion and first-hand knowledge. When guests ask difficult or uncomfortable questions, such as those regarding crime rates or social unrest, a professional guide does not shy away or become defensive. Instead, you provide vital context. For instance, if a visitor asks if a specific city is dangerous, you can explain the reality of urban life by comparing it to their own home. You might point out that in any densely populated area, whether it is Los Angeles, New York, or Belize City, there are challenges, but these do not define the entire culture or the spirit of the people. Your role is to shift the narrative from fear to appreciation. Instead of focusing on negative stereotypes, you can highlight the area as a cultural mecca or a premier destination for birdwatching, mentioning specific attractions like aquatic birds or mangrove warblers that make the location unique. Passion is your greatest tool in this endeavor. When you speak with genuine love for your environment and your history, it is infectious. If you have a personal connection to the site, such as being of Mayan descent while guiding a temple tour, sharing that identity adds a layer of authenticity that no textbook can replicate. This personal touch makes the history feel alive and commands respect from the listeners. You are not just a lecturer, you are a living representative of the heritage you are describing.
Fortunately, most visitors who choose to participate in a tour do so with a degree of openness. They want to learn and experience something new, which makes your job incredibly rewarding. By providing truthful, informative, and inspiring presentations, you provoke thought and encourage guests to question their own biases. By the time the tour wraps up, a successful guide has not only fulfilled an itinerary, but has also helped guests see the country through a lens of knowledge and empathy. This transformation of perspective is the ultimate goal of interpretation.
When you represent your home with pride and accuracy, you replace prejudice with understanding, ensuring that every guest leaves with a deeper, more meaningful connection to the destination and its people.